Her boots sink and never quite come free, one foot, then the other, like a slow sentence being erased. The lantern bobbed beyond the reeds, a small, steady eye in the fog, and she reached. Her radio crackled once, a thin paper sound in the marsh. "Do you see that light?" she asked. The voice on the other end answered only with static, and then a far-off gull, and somewhere under both of them, the fen seemed to breathe. "Find somewhere dark. Put your headphones on. Listen closely now. Welcome back to Nature's Dread. I'm Sam Nong, and tonight our story is called Black Fen, the lanterns that keep the tide. For the next hour, we're going into a place that remembers footsteps like pages pressed between peat and time. A place where light and memory tangle until you can't tell which is leading who."
The central figure in this episode was Mara Lynn, a botanist in her late 20s who came to study peat moss and the plants that claim the marsh edges. She wasn't a textbook scientist with a chalkboard persona. She preferred wet maps, worn notebooks, and late-night surveys when the fen quieted and secrets, she believed, became visible. People in the nearby village would see her headlights on lonely tracks and joke about the botanist who loved the dark. They said she had a habit of coming back with pockets full of tiny, soggy specimens and a head full of questions. Her notes are careful and strange at once. In one entry, she writes of motes of light that rose from the peat like breath, and an instrument, a compass, that spun as if refusing a certain direction. She circled words, drew arrows to margins, and added a final line. This doesn't add up. Then she planned one more walk before she sent a package of samples back to the university. That night, a lantern bobbed beyond the reeds. That radio line, "Do you see that light?" was the last recorded moment anyone outside the fen had with her. When the search teams arrived at dawn, the fen left a map made of footprints, rows of prints leading through tussocks, stopping, shifting direction, starting again, as if the ground itself were making decisions. At certain intervals, the prints seemed to fade, not because the mud covered them, but because the peat preserved them differently, as if stamping a pause into the earth. Witnesses on the village edges began to tell stories too. A light seen on still nights, a lantern that hovered without a sound. Tides that should have been sleeping at noon rolled back into channels at odd hours. The pattern wasn't a single wild occurrence. It was a chorus of small impossibilities. I spoke with a peatland ecologist who spent decades in bogs and fens. She offered patient explanations that still left room for wonder. Marshes are strange chemistry labs, decomposing plant matter, low oxygen, pockets of gas. Under the right conditions, some organisms glow. Bioluminescence is not magic, it's chemistry and evolution. But she also described how peat can preserve impressions like time-stopped pages, footprints, human-made paths, even traces of tools, and how that preservation can play tricks on memory. Her words were scientific and tender at the same time. The fen remembers, even if it does not mean to. An optical physicist helped me parse the lights. Mirages in marshes are different from heat haze over asphalt. The air there stratifies, layers of slightly different densities slipping over each other, bending light in ways that make distant reflections float or elongate. Add a human-made lantern or even the bioluminescent glow of microbes, and the eye is liable to misplace distance, to grant solidity to something thin as breath. He warned against neat answers. Science can show you mechanisms, but not always intentions. A mirage explains the shape of a light, not why a person might follow it.
The search and rescue leader I spoke with had the kind of practical voice that cuts through romanticism. He talked about the fen as a navigation killer, No stars, no sound to bounce off, only muted horizons and false bearings. Compasses can yaw near mineral anomalies, headlamps refract oddly, and straightforward walking becomes a grid of false choices. He emphasized training and caution. Stick to lines, string flags, move in teams. His last line stayed with me. People in the fen don't get lost so much as they get convinced they're on a road that doesn't exist.
The turning point in the case came a sealed field bag was found caught on a reed mat, half buried in peat. Inside were carefully labeled plant samples, the delicate mosses Mara studied, a notebook with more circles and arrows, and one smear of mud across the final page. Not a blot, but a dragged line, like a hurried fingerprint left by a glove. There was nothing overtly violent, no sign of a struggle, but that smear felt like a story interrupted. The discovery shifted the hunt from speculative to immediate. This was not simply a tale told by lights. This was her last known evidence, the tangible record of someone moving through a landscape that was already changing beneath her.
Here is the reconstruction, as best we can build it. Imagine the night thick with reed perfume, the soft leather of boots sucking peat as you step, each foot a small, wet negotiation. A lantern wobbles ahead, too steady to be a firefly. The compass quivers. You tell yourself it's a neighbor or a misfired headlamp. You call into the fog and hear your voice return as a stranger. Then the ground gives, an instant of falling that is more a betrayal than a collapse, and everything narrows to the breath you are trying not to lose. When I read the scene aloud to the SAR leader, he classified the sounds for me. The initial sink, the desperate stamping, then silence. He said, "At that point, you stop being a walker. You become an animal in a trap."
After the immediate search ended, the town reorganized itself in small, meaningful ways. Trails that once welcomed evening walkers got roped off at twilight. A modest wooden memorial was placed where the path meets the fen, flowers pinned to it that wilted on schedule with the tidal whims. Some residents forbade their children from taking the old shortcut down by the reeds. Others kept lighting lanterns on the edge, a vigil that married superstition and grief. Scientists returned to the data, peat cores, gas samples, instrument logs. Some questions received layered, partial answers. Others resisted explanation, like stones that refuse a sculptor's chisel. And yet, the fen kept offering a final image. Weeks after the search, a fisherman reported a single lantern far out where no one was supposed to be. He swore it bobbed on a channel no light could reach, and then winked out like a thought never finished. Some said it was a trick of the eye. Others felt the old warning in the story of will-o'-the-wisps, lights that lead and sometimes mislead. I stood at that margin with the peatland ecologist, and she pointed to the horizon between reeds. "The fen holds its history like peat holds a footprint," she said. "Sometimes the past shows up as a light. Sometimes people follow it. Sometimes the fen keeps them."
So what are we left with? A botanist who loved questions, and the one question that will not go away. Why did she go after that light? Was it curiosity, professional rigor, misread instruments, or something the fen itself offered and would not relent? We can present science, bioluminescent microbes, optical refraction, pockets of gas, and we must, because they matter. We can also honor the human choice that walked into the reeds. The truth may be a mixture, landscape, memory, and a particular kind of human attention coalescing into a final, fragile path.
If you're hearing this and you plan to visit a wetland, a few practical notes. Travel with a partner. Mark your route with flagging. Carry navigation devices and know how to use them. Wear appropriate boots and layers, and respect local advice about tides and access. Most fen trips end in curiosity and photographs, not tragedy.
The point is not to frighten you away from such places. It's to show them their proper respect. The fen is not malevolent by design. It's just patient, and it keeps things longer than we expect.
Before we close, a short note. The personal details in this episode were handled with care. Wherever possible, I relied on public records and the testimony of professionals. We resist speculation and avoid turning grief into spectacle. If this story touched you, consider sharing it with someone who listens in the dark, not to sensationalize, but to remember. And if you were moved by the experts who guided this piece, look for their notes and citations in the episode description.
One last image, a single lantern, distant and patient, hovering where tides shouldn't be. You might tell yourself it's a mirage, a marsh gas glow, a fisherman with a lantern. You might tell yourself many sensible things. But if you've been with me through the reeds, you'll feel the fen's memory, the pressure of time pressing shapes back into the world. Are you still with me? Then keep this thought. Some landscapes remember us longer than we remember them, and sometimes those memories are lights that keep calling.
If this story stayed with you, if that lantern keeps bobbing in the corner of your imagination, subscribe to Nature's Dread for more tales where beauty meets terror. Share the episode with someone who likes to listen close and put your headphones on. If you'd like to help us research or have a story from a landscape that won't let you go, send a note through the show page. I'm Sam Nang. Until next time, check the corners.